Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. I'm just putting a layer of compost as a mulch on this bed, which is ready for planting. And what I'm going to put in is some curly endive. Now this is a chicory. I love chicory. It's slightly bitter, and that can sound like a bad thing, but actually it adds a dimension to a lot of things, which I think is delicious. For example, a salad of this curly endive with blue cheese, walnuts, and a really good dressing is absolutely lovely. These will grow quite quickly. I would expect to start harvesting them round about the middle of October and to carry on doing so through winter. The one thing you want to watch with all forms of chicory is that they just don't like sitting in very wet, cold conditions. And I do often cloche them to protect them from the rain as much as from the cold. On today's programme, JJ Chalmers visits the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh to join its thriving community of local gardeners.
My role in here is more like a community engagement. So it's trying to create a safe space for people to come and learn how to grow vegetables.
Nick celebrates the late flowering perennials that add height and colour to our autumnal borders.
One of my absolute favourite perennials is this, Macleia cordata. It has to be one of the biggest of the genus. You can see it goes up to about 3 metres, so it's a really substantial plant.
And Nellie, Patty and myself welcome a very special visitor to Longmeadow.
I can see she's rather keen on the cameras.
Come on, good girl. The greenhouse has been a complete success. Everything has been a high quality as well as quantity. The tomatoes, for example, have tasted delicious. They've been really good. This is a variety called Brandy Boy, which is a modern one. It's not an heirloom variety, but it is really, really good. You can see that it's got quite a fleshy fruit, but the taste is so good. It's rich, slightly musty, it's sweet, but got a touch of acidity. And it's that combination, which is quite complicated, that makes tomatoes so good. And from now on, the days are going to be getting shorter. The heat is likely to steadily diminish. And so conditions for good tomato ripening and growing are getting worse from now on. So give them a chance. Strip the leaves off as soon as the fruit form, and that means that these green fruit are much more likely to ripen. Can I have the basket? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. Right. As well as tomatoes, the chilies have been very good this year. Now, we did sow some together, and the Padron have done well. You can see here, these are quite big plants. They do need a regular water supply, but they need good drainage. They don't like to sit in water. So these get watered every day, and we feed these every week, a liquid seaweed feed, and the critical thing is to harvest chilies as soon as they're ripe. They look lovely and decorative when they're on the bush, but once they're ripe, they will inhibit the production of new flowers. And if you don't have new flowers, you're going to have new fruit. If you're growing a lot of chilies, you're going to have to cut a lot. But chilies freeze very well. And that means you never have a glut. The crop I'm really interested in is one that I've often had no success with at all, and those are aubergines. You can see that that's a good fruit and ready for the eating. Aubergines, rather like peppers, rather like tomatoes, like light and heat. And the more you can give them, the better. I water them every day. We feed them once a week, just like the chilies. and just let them get on with it. And I've had no problems whatsoever. So it's been a good year. Now, this is the beginning of a large harvest that will spread over the coming weeks, but we use it all. We freeze and store an awful lot. We share it with our extended family, and we're very grateful for that. But increasingly, people are finding it's not just the sharing of produce which is rewarding, but the whole process of gardening. And J.J. Chalmers went to the Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh, to see how they are sharing their garden with the local community.
Edinburgh, a diverse and beautiful city that is home to over 500,000 people. One of my favourite places in this incredible city is the Royal Botanic Garden. I can remember coming here on school trips as a kid, and I'm really proud that a garden with such majesty and variety exists in a city that I love so much. But I've always felt that this place was a bit of a visitor's attraction, although I am delighted to have discovered that this place has become a vital part of its local community. Over the past decade, the gardens have been actively engaging with their local community, sharing this vital green space to help enrich their lives. And Eleanor Leslie is key to making that happen. So a lot of people come here.
10,000 people come to the Botanics daily during the summertime. But my role in here is more like a community engagement. So it's trying to create a safe space for people to come and learn how to grow vegetables. So we've got groups like people who are recovering from cancer or going through treatment, or we might have groups like India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, or we might have kids with autism. So it's a wide range of community groups. And part of it is trying to show as well these community groups that the garden is for everyone. It's not just keen gardeners who know a lot about gardening.
What do you feel people get from coming here?
Connecting with people. Do you know, if you're on your own at home, so it tackles all that isolation. Being in touch with nature, connecting with plants. It's kind of like mindful, but in a way that you don't call it mindful, because you're really noticing the colours of the flowers. So it's visual. You get to smell the chamomile flowers, or you get to eat the produce that you've grown.
And this is an important part of it as well, that the opportunity to have a talk, but kind of be distracted.
Yeah. It's not like this intensity of having to look at you and having to have a conversation. How are you doing, JJ? Do you know? It's just like we're doing a wee task together, having a wee chat. It brings people closer together to be able to have a deeper conversation, a deeper connection.
The gardens are now alive with activity as local residents get their hands in the soil and garden here amongst friends. I want to discover how this green oasis is supporting the city's residents. Mahbub, what are you up to?
Well, these are garlic plants. We grew these last autumn.
Right.
And we're at the stage where the leaves are turning a little bit brown and dry. So it's time to dig them up and harvest them.
So how long have you been coming here for?
I've been coming to the Botanic Gardens for around 20 years.
Right. You come here a lot then?
I do frequently, every third or fourth day. And seeing all these wonderful exotic plants in the Botanic Gardens inspired me to learn more about exotic plants. And my family moved from Kashmir to England when I was about 5 years old. But I remember eating mangoes in Kashmir. And I grow mango plants now.
Really?
And I share that knowledge with other people.
Is this place your garden?
Of course. I love Botanic Gardens so much that I bought my flat here so I can be as close as possible to the Botanic Gardens.
Wow.
And I've spent years here, and I feel it's very much part of my life. And it's a little paradise.
What are you ladies harvesting here?
I'm harvesting coriander. It's nothing like fresh coriander. I'll be making a nice chutney with it.
That
With
sounds-
garlic and green chilies and lemon juice, and oh, it's lovely.
Oh, that
Can
sounds...
have it with anything. Can have it on your sandwich as well.
Right, well, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The gardens now not only offer the opportunity to reinforce cultural bonds and shared experiences, but also offers a place to heal for people in their hour of need. Hello, Anne.
Hello.
I've got you some compost. What are you planting up?
It's coriander. They're quite big seeds. And I've got to make sure that they're twice the depth of the seed.
Right. How did you first discover this place? How did you get involved?
Well, I'd had a fairly serious operation, which was quite life-changing. And I was recovering. I'm going to physiotherapy and things. Can I have some more?
Oh, of course.
But I really was feeling pretty fragile. So my physio sort of recommended me to the Move More class. And I thought, never done gardening. And it was just lovely. The group we were with, we'd all had cancer. And when you're feeling fragile and you're trying to be well for people and you're trying to be well for your family, it's quite nice to come somewhere where nobody knows you and you can sort of make it your own pace. You know, if there was somebody that wasn't going to walk very far, we wouldn't walk very far. So it was all very gentle but productive.
Wow. This group is clearly very important to you.
Yeah, I think it's important to all of us. Our NHS is remarkable and fantastic. And they do cure you and they do take care of you and they do their best for you. But when you get out, you're not healed. And you've got to do the healing with the help of others.
Do you think you could have come as far without this place, without that network?
It would have taken me a lot longer. And I think time is of the essence. Life's quite precious and you need to get on with it. And if you're hanging around feeling miserable and not being able to do things for long, I think it probably becomes more of a habit.
And that takes its toll as
And
well.
that takes its toll. So I think it was a great boost.
To discover how the Botanic Gardens became the horticultural heart to the people of Edinburgh, I'm meeting the head honcho, Simon Milne, who has been the driving force behind it. Simon, I heard you were here thinning out the apples.
Yeah, JJ, come and help.
Get these apples
Get
thin.
thinning the apples, take out anything that's diseased or not in good shape.
Where does your passion for greenery, the outdoors, where does that come from?
Oh, it started very early on in life. I was brought up with a family of gardeners, lived in the country.
But then you had a fairly roundabout way of getting here, is that right?
Yeah, I joined the Royal Marines for a bit of fun, the organisation with whom you are well acquainted, and stayed there for about 20 years and then was invalided out and came to this passion.
So like me, you were medically discharged from the
was.
Marines.
Yeah.
Was this type of thing, horticulture, green spaces, was that a part of moving beyond that?
Yeah, it was. I mean, you and I have both seen some pretty horrific things in our times, wearing our green berets, and to come to this where you're moving away from death and destruction and moving into the greenness.
Some botanic gardens, when you come to them, they feel a bit like a museum, and it's sort of look but don't
Not
touch.
this one, JJ.
No, it isn't. I mean, I've had the most wonderful day here, met the most wonderful people. How are you creating that? Because it feels a bit unique.
It's making sure that we are always relevant to society, helping to meet society's needs. The people of Edinburgh, people of Scotland, view this garden often as theirs. And they may have taken their first steps here, they may have had their first date here, get married here. So, it is very much part of the community. So although it's one of the world's great collection of plants, it's top science, top education, it's about people of the heart.
Right, where's this amazing bounty headed off to then?
It's going to a community project. They do food bank every other week. When the pandemic hit, people were unable to come into the garden. So we decided to continue growing our vegetables and be able to connect with the community groups out of the garden. It's been such a success that we decided to continue that relationship of growing more vegetables.
That's fantastic. So when people couldn't get to the garden, you took the garden to them?
Yeah.
Right, well, in which case, don't let me hold you back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you know, I have been to these botanic gardens countless times in my life, but I've never experienced them like this before. And it's made me realise that if people are allowed, in fact, if they're empowered to take responsibility for green spaces like this, then it's not just the gardens that thrive, it's the communities.
There are quite a few community garden projects around the country, and that's fantastic, and there's room for lots more. But I think it's especially inspirational when one of our great gardens embrace the community so expertly and with such commitment, then that really is inspiring. Now, the writing garden has gone from being loosely tousled to frankly shabby and chaotic. And that is one of the prices you pay for a very informal style of planting. But it's not too late to do something about it. A little bit of judicious cutting back and maybe some replanting can carry the display well into autumn. Now, certain plants, like Ammi majus, which is an annual, are easy. These come out, and that's it. They've done their stuff. The trick of this kind of tidying up at this stage of the year is not to see it as clearing the mess left after a party that was high summer. This is all part of the continuation. Now, this will take me a little while, but let's go and visit one of your gardens. And it's a special visit, this, because we have a gardener that not only has skill, not only has enthusiasm, but he also has youth on his side.
Hello Gardeners World, my name is Anthony and I live in North London. My gardening adventure began last year while I was working towards my gardening badge for beavers. Today I would like to show you my wildlife garden. This shady, uneven spot by our shed is pretty much left to itself in the hope that it will become a haven for wildlife. But we didn't have any pond. So we decided to change that. We built it and they came. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye!
I think Anthony definitely deserves his badge, and he's completely right. If you make it, they will come. And after a pond, long grass is almost as good. And if you've got both, then you are going to share your garden with such an interesting array of wildlife, all of which will make your garden healthier as well as more fascinating. Now, in this bit here, we have crocus, followed by narcissi in spring, and they look fantastic. Last year, I sowed yellow rattle and some wildflower seed, and some of it has come through. But there's a long way to go before this gets anything like what I want it to be. And if you can stop the grass overwhelming the other plants, they will in turn come in. And the way you do that is by cutting the grass any time after the end of June, but August is normally the best sort of time, and taking it away. So that's what I'm going to do now. The whole point of making a good wildflower meadow is based upon depleting the reserves of the grass. Because grass will always win any battle with any other wildflower. At the moment, it's much too strong here, so I want to remove it. The crucial thing is to cut it to expose soil, because the seed from the wildflowers needs to be in contact with soil in order to germinate. And over the next few years, the grass will weaken and die back, and the wildflowers will come forward, and we'll get that lovely floral tapestry which we all want from our wildflower meadows, let alone all the lovely insects and butterflies that will flock to it. But if you feel you need outside inspiration, then go and visit one in its full glory. And that's exactly what I did a couple of years ago. I went to Highgrove, the home of His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, to visit his wildflower meadow at the height of summer. The meadow surrounding the house at Highgrove was created over 30 years ago. During early summer, it's filled with a wide variety of wildflowers, including yellow rattle, oxeye daisies, red clover, and a range of grasses. Debs Goodenough has been the head gardener here for 11 years, and one of her many tasks is to maintain this wonderful expanse, which is now in its full summer glory.
What prompted His Royal Highness to make a meadow on this scale? Because it wasn't a normal thing to do back then, was it?
No. His Royal Highness had found out that it was sort of 95% of all wildflower meadows were lost in the years between the Second World War and the early 80s. Things were ploughed, sprayed, change of management, and he wanted to stop that, halt the decline, and start to put back what had been lost. When he came to Highgrove, it was the opportunity that he could do something, recreate a meadow, and start to show people that this can be done.
In order to develop the meadow, His Royal Highness began a collaboration with the naturalist and conservationist Dame Miriam Rothschild, who for many years had campaigned to introduce wildflowers to gardens, parks and motorways, using a seed mix that she had created.
His Royal Highness took her advice, and she gave him a mix which was called Farmer's Nightmare. And that was primarily an annual mix, but His Royal Highness had some perennials mixed in with that. And it's all the things that farmers don't want in their crop fields. And it gave you that sort of real flush of annuals, the poppies, the things like that. And so that really gave that first sort of blast of colour and interest in the meadow.
The seed mix contained different species that were typical of the natural flora of Gloucestershire.
Taking her advice, this was done almost as a showpiece to show people what they were missing.
That's right. Dame Miriam Rothschild reckoned that she could put a fairly good meadow back in about 15 years.
This is providing pleasure and inspiration to many, many people. But what's the plan for the future? Because we have lost so much.
For the Queen's Jubilee, for her coronation, His Royal Highness set up the Coronation Meadow Scheme, which was picking 60 meadows across the country in 60 counties to create and use them as donor meadows for 60 new meadows.
And these were meadows that were unspoiled and full of wildflowers.
That's right.
As a result of the Coronation Meadow Initiative, 88 new wildflower meadows have now been created across the country.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if the countryside could look a bit more like this and less like a sort of industrial agricultural estate?
I hope we're around to see it, Monty.
Highgrove is a major garden, full of lovely things, but nothing in it is lovelier than its wildflower meadow in its summer pomp.
The Highgrove Meadow is really exceptional. But you don't need that sort of space to have something that is really special for you. And I don't think you need 15 years either. It certainly will get better and better, but from year 2, they become really interesting. Now take this strip here. The yellow rattle has developed beautifully and the seed is now dried, that has fallen and that will spread. Now the wild carrot is flowering. Now this has got not just a beautiful flower, but it has one of the best seed heads of any wildflower. So if I cut this now, like I've cut the mound, I would lose the wild carrot. So there's no perfect time to cut. There's no perfect mix. There's no perfect situation. You can have it in slight shade, you can have it on heavy soil, light soil. You can buy floral mixes for almost every situation. Work out what you want, enjoy the process, and just remember there's one constant that ties all wildflower meadows together, which is that they are cut and cleared, just like this, which will go to the compost heap, somewhere between midsummer and autumn. And if you do that, it will develop and it will be a glory. Now, having had the privilege of visiting His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales's garden, later in the programme I receive a visit from another keen royal gardener here at Longmeadow.
In an ideal world, I'd like to be in the garden all day, every day. But when I get a moment, I'm there all day long.
We join Nick as he gives us his guide to the very best tall late flowering perennials for your borders. But first, we visit one of your gardens in Scunthorpe.
Hello, my name is Mercy and I came from the Philippines. My father was a farmer and I think I got his interest. And this is the result. So this is our garden and we call it the Meadows. And every morning I feed the fish and made me so relaxed and happy. And here I planted some lavender because I love them. I collected some little plants which grow from seed from the mother plants, and I will put them around the pond next year. We also created a wall garden and making use of pallet. This side are the vegetable patch. They are all in the raised bed because easy to manage. On this side of the house, we planted some runner beans and we had a good harvest. So thank you very much for giving me the chance to show my garden, and bye!
Well, thank you, Mercy, for letting us have the opportunity to enjoy your garden with you. Now, you can see that having cut the grass, I've raked it up, taken it to the compost heap, and what I'm left with looks pretty desolate. But that is fine. That's exactly what I want. But I am making a change now I've cut it back. So what I'm planting is a hedge, and I'm going to put lavender in. The reason why I'm planting it here, because lavender needs good drainage, which is hard to get here at Longmeadow. But because it's a slope and it's south-facing, I figure that it should have a fighting chance of not just surviving, but thriving. Lavender is a Mediterranean plant, and it has evolved to thrive on very poor soil, very good drainage, and hot sun. Now, before I plant, I'm going to add some grit. And when I say some grit, quite a lot. If, like me, you have a clay-based soil, it's too rich for it. And what you get is soft, sappy growth that then often gets affected by the weather, particularly in cold and wet combined. So drainage is the key. So the best thing to do is to mix it in with the soil. Now, the plants. It's a variety called Folgate, which I've not grown before, and I've chosen this because the colour looks fantastic. It's a nice strong plant, upright, and the smaller the plant, the quicker it will establish and the quicker it will grow. So be brave, buy small. Now, as far as spacing goes, I'll be looking at about a foot apart. The only thing to bear in mind is don't plant them too deep. So just no deeper than the height of the top of the compost. And that's absolutely fine. Of course, what I haven't mentioned is the fragrance. Now, my own sense of smell is very limited, but even I love the incredible musky, oily fragrance of lavender. Although they need really good drainage, do water them in. And if it's dry, water them weekly until they're growing strongly. And if you do have any plants when you go to plant that have got flowers on them, cut them off. And that may seem counterintuitive, but what it will do is put all the energy of the plant into growing a good root system. And it will be bigger and better and healthier next year as a result. But the lavender season is over. It's been and gone, and we're planning for next year. We've entered a whole new range of plants for our gardens for the next month or so. And Nick went down to Dorset to visit Knoll Gardens to explore that new plant potential.
Around the end of August, you start to sense change in the garden. Autumn is in the air, and with summer colour fading, the borders can start to look depleted. Here at Knoll Gardens, they have the solution in the shape of some stunning, soaring plants. What I'm talking about are the tall perennials, those wonderful plants that almost imperceptibly inch their way up at the back of your borders throughout summer when the rest of the garden is looking fabulous. And as the rest of the garden starts to fade as we hit autumn, suddenly the tall perennials come into their own and give that last vibrant burst of colour at 6 or 8 foot high before we move into winter. And here is a perfect example. This is Vernonia. It comes from North America. It's a prairie plant, about 2 metres high, so it's coming well above me. What's fantastic about it is that when the rest of the garden is fading, things are coming out of flower, it is bursting into bloom. Now, it's part of the Asteraceae family, which you can see from these flower structures, has this beautiful kind of lilac-y pink tone. What I find particularly useful about it is that it has a very small footprint. So even if you've got a narrow border, you can use it to get that height and colour at the back right at the end of the season. And it gets better because once these flowers have faded, the stems take on a black tone and they're big, fluffy, beige seed heads which last all the way into the winter. Now, you may think that this is an aster, and you wouldn't be entirely wrong. It had that name up until about 3 years ago, but now it's Dollengaria. It's a brilliant plant for border backs where you've got lots of space. I think it's got this lovely wild feel to it, and it's great if you can let it rampage. It's not particularly fussy when it comes to soils. It's very happy in full sun or light shade. It works well as a cut flower and has one particularly useful trait. It doesn't get mildew at all, which is brilliant. So all those lower leaves stay on and stay very, very clean. And I think one of the best things about it is that it's in full flower now, but you can see it's absolutely covered in buds. So there's probably another 6 weeks or 2 months of bloom. Brilliant for pollinators and a great splash of colour that will go all the way into autumn. If you're looking for a bulky herbaceous plant for the back of your borders, then you can't go far wrong with this. This is Persicaria alpina. Now, it comes from the Himalaya. In summer, it has white flowers, but at this time of year, they slowly transition into pink. Now, it's about 2.5 metres tall, so it's a real beast, but actually it also works really well as a hedge. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just with some simple spring propagation. So you can just bite out chunks of soil with a good amount of root and stem in there, and then plant them as you wish. Now, something I think that's going on here, which is really lovely, is the association between the two plants here. So this is Veronicastrum fascination. Now, it had its moment in the middle of summer where it had these beautiful lilac flowers, but now it's got this fantastic structure that will last all the way into the winter. So I think the combination of these two forms, this wonderful sort of spiked form and then the fluffy form of the Persicaria, just look beautiful together. What a fabulous combination. One of my absolute favourite perennials is this. It's Macleia cordata. Now, it's sometimes referred to as the plume poppy. And the reason for that, believe it or not, is in the poppy family. But it has to be one of the biggest of the genus. You can see it goes up to about 3 metres, so it's a really substantial plant. And it also spreads as well, so it's not the sort of plant you'd put in a very small garden. Now, in summer, it produces these fantastic spikes of flower, and they have lovely little powder puff white blooms that last for several months. But now, it's still got that height, but you've got this fabulous foliage as the focus. It's got a really special quality to the shape. It's almost sort of oak-like leaf, very glaucousy blue on the surface, so it's great contrast for other plants. And then as it blows around in the wind, you get these incredible white backs to the leaves. Now, I think one way to really set it off at this time of year is to pair it with another tall perennial. And I think this is one of the ideal plants to do it with. This is Eupatorium purpureum, and it flowers at about this height. So you get that lovely association of the two colours, the two forms, and the contrast of the foliage. What a lovely pairing. Of course, Eupatorium can stand alone too, with its great structure, rosy flowers and superb burgundy stems. Plus, it's not a hybrid, so it's likely to remain upright and not need any staking. Many of the perennials here are teamed with grasses and other prairie plants. And as you can see, it's a truly fantastic combination. Growing behind me is Miscanthus Roland. It's a lovely grass. It goes up to about 3 metres tall, and it's got that really distinct white stripe through the centre of the leaf. But the flowers are beautiful too. They've got a sort of zigzag quality to the inflorescence and that lovely sort of pinky beige tone. I think they make the perfect backing to this, which is Helianthus lemon queen. And this has to be one of my favourite of all the perennials. It's one of those really interesting plants that comes into bloom right at the end of the season, so it's looking super fresh now, and these blooms will go on and on and on. Now, it comes up to about 2 metres high. It's a clumping plant, so it stays fairly tightly together. And then you've got these beautiful, typical daisy flowers, those little black details in the centre there, and lovely kind of deep buttery tone. But this will keep blooming from now all the way up to November. I've come to love late summer for its colour palette, play of light and textures. But to make the most of it, you need plants that come into their own at this time of year. And for me, the most important are these magnificent tall perennials.
Nick is right. These really vigorous, generous plants at this time of year are a joy. And the Jewel Garden, of course, depends upon that scale of planting. It's not just hardy perennials. The cannas, annuals like sunflowers, tithonias, the cardoons, and of course, all the late flowering clematis create this sense of exuberance and colour and joy, even though summer is waning. And actually, even though the days are getting shorter, I'm still adding plants. I'm going to put a little group of gladioli in here that will give a real burst of colour. This, I think, with this richer, sort of deep blood red is perfect. I've got a little bit of a gap here. I want to pop them in. Of course, gladioli come from South Africa and like sunshine. You can see, poor thing, that's pot bound, but it'll be okay. It'll be fine. Now, it might need a bit of support, but hopefully not, because the idea is that there are enough plants all around it to hold it up. This will add a flare of colour over the next few weeks. It's not too late to keep developing, taking out and adding and fine-tuning your borders for at least another 4 or 5 weeks to come. Now, it's time to visit the last of your gardens today. And it takes us up to Manchester and a garden that is focusing very much on sustainability.
Hello, my name's Seth Ormsby and I'm from Levenshulme in South Manchester. It's raining, of course. I have a communication disorder as a result of a brain infection, so please bear with me. Today I'm going to show you my garden. Gardening for me is freedom. Behind me are my especially made raised beds. As you can see, they are unusually high. That means that I don't need to bend down when I work. What I want to show you are my planters. They're made out of leftover guttering. I like to reuse anything I can for the garden. For me, that's what gardening is about, being sustainable. As we say in Levy, the revolution will be fertilised. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
I think we're all now very aware of the complexity and the enormity of the problems of climate change and the way that sustainability is becoming so important. But it can feel overwhelming. But then when you see the way that Seth is addressing that in his own backyard, in his own way, and doing something about it, that is inspiring. And actually, I think that if all of us did what we could in our gardens, however small, however modest, between the millions of us gardeners, we could make a big difference. Here in the Jewel Garden, the colours are now reaching their maximum intensity, and this will hold for the next few weeks. And that's because the colour palette is actually changing. And you've got blends of colours rather than just bright, clear primary colours. You have the cosmos, and of course the sunflowers and the tithonias, and then the rich purples of salvia and buddleia, and actually we've still got a purple delphinium in flower. A few weeks ago, I was delighted to welcome Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cornwall to Longmeadow to show her around the garden. I knew that she herself is a keen gardener, and I wanted to find out what she most enjoys growing.
I grow almost anything. It's sort of, I just like things sort of evolving in a bed. Lupins. I never really took in lupins much before, but I've suddenly developed a sort of passion for them. And if you keep deadheading them, they keep on popping up.
They've been very good this year.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I love delphiniums. My goodness me, they are a problem.
What's your problem with them?
You know, I put in all the pea sticks to keep them going, but if you stake them, I don't know, they just look a bit false.
I agree. I mean, I always feel with supporting, it should look as though you haven't done it.
Exactly. It's just some of them get so big.
And then you cut them back?
And I cut them back, but this year they've shot up there.
Yeah.
Then we got that monsoon the other day,
yeah.
and they snapped off. I could hardly bear it.
Really?
They're friends, you know,
Yeah.
and they've had their heads chopped off.
And as well as those garden favourites, I discovered that the Duchess also shares my own love for dahlias. Do you grow a lot?
I grow quite a lot. There's a huge one. I think it's called Black Knight.
Yes, I know.
It's
yeah.
well, and it grows and grows.
Yeah,
I didn't put it in very long ago. I was away 2 days, so I came back and it was the same size as me. Once you put them in the ground and they get going, they shoot up. And
But you take them in winter?
I take them in.
Do you get much time to garden?
Not nearly enough. In an ideal world, I'd like to be in the garden all day, every day. But when I get a moment, I'm there all day long.
Yeah.
But I like here, I like things spilling into it.
Yeah.
I'm not a very neat gardener.
If you're confident, you can let things do what they want to do.
Because nature is so clever, isn't it? You know, it just happens.
And presumably you garden organically. You'd probably be in trouble if you didn't.
I'd be in dead trouble if I didn't. And I just love being outside and, you know, and smelling everything is so lovely.
I mean, certainly a garden without fragrance is an impoverished place, isn't it?
And what I love is when the orange blossom, you get that first smell of them.
Yeah.
That, to me, is the sort of sign that spring's on the way and everything's getting better.
The Duchess has a keen interest in growing good vegetables. But as we headed towards the Longmeadow vegetable garden, someone couldn't resist stealing the show. Come here. What is it? You being naughty?
Where's your ballie? What have you done with your ballie? I can see she's rather keen on the cameras.
Nelly?
No, she's what's called pose.
Come here. What is it? Come here. Mel? What is it? Oh. Come on, come on.
She's got a few words to say.
Yes. So we grow everything in raised beds here. And it seems that the Duchess faces exactly the same challenges that all gardeners do.
I'm very lucky. I've got a big vegetable garden. But you get the mice, the voles this year, all ate the asparagus roots, and then they got into the strawberries. So you can never win. There's always something.
I think you just have to accept that there are some things that are just not going to go for you this year, you know, whatever it might be. Having seen Nellie get royal attention, Patty wanted to get in on the act too. Yeah, hello, Pat.
Hello.
You come to see us?
I'm here. Well, very sweet. I might take you home with me.
Huge character.
Very little, but you keep everybody else in order.
Good year for courgettes.
Do you eat all your courgettes?
We grate them. We have them with pasta.
Yes.
They make a very good salad. We slice them and then put them on a dry griddle.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, which is very good. Beetroot, chard. We love chard.
Chard is delicious.
I prefer it to spinach, really.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
I could live on spinach.
If you get your timing wrong, spinach bolts very fast.
I know.
Yeah.
All mine's bolted at the moment.
Well, it will in this weather.
Yeah, it's just gone.
Yeah. Carrots.
Carrots.
Celeriac.
Have the carrots been quite good this year?
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, the carrots, as you know, can be very hit and miss.
Oh, good. I know.
Yeah.
I know. I had last year. They all went, but I think they got eaten.
Yeah.
I sort of gave up last year.
There's always next year.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
I wanted to show the Duchess the Paradise Garden, which is inspired by Islamic gardens, as I've always admired the one at Highgrove, created by His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales.
Nice just having the bit of water in the middle.
It's very restful to come and sit in here. You know, there's a calming influence.
There is something very I could sit in here for hours.
And as we enjoyed the tranquility of the water, the Duchess shared her thoughts on how important gardens and gardening can be for our well-being.
I think gardens got people through COVID. They realised how special a garden was and what they could do with it. They could become inventive. Even if they hadn't before, they could start growing vegetables. It was a sort of spiritual experience for them. They discovered a sort of affinity with the soil. You can go into a garden, you can completely lose yourself. You don't have to think about anything else. You're surrounded by nature. You know you've got birds singing, you've got bees buzzing about. There is something very healing about gardens.
Is there any particular job you like doing?
I love pruning. My mother taught me, she taught me how to prune. At the time I thought it was the most boring thing. Oh, goodness, this is boring. You have to sit for hours with the secateurs and watch her. And now I'm so grateful. To prune properly is quite difficult, isn't it? I mean, you don't learn it overnight.
No.
And I love actual planting.
You actually like the connection with the soil?
Oh, I love the connection with the soil, yeah.
Is there anything that you plan to do in gardening that you haven't done and yet you would like to do?
I've got a little bit of a woodland garden that I started, and I would love to build that up more. And I'd love to put down swathes of bulbs, and I'd also like to have a proper wildflower meadow. At the moment, I've got a bit, but the grass has sort of taken over, and we're going to have another go this year planting more seeds, because I think, especially now, it's ever more important to have these wildflowers. I mean, if we're going to keep on attracting, you know, butterflies and bees, I think that's very important.
And I suppose I have to ask you, do you watch the programme?
Of course I do, Monty.
Do you do the jobs?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yes.
No, if I've got time, I do. The thing about gardening is you're never going to know it all, are you? You just learn every day. I'm sure you learn every day. I mean, people love that. You know, they go to your programme, they learn something new, and they rush out into their garden and they put it into practice.
You must lead the most incredibly busy, sort of regimented life. I imagine the garden is a solace.
It's a complete, I mean, it's my sanctuary. A couple of hours in the garden and all is well with the world.
Well, obviously, that was a great day, but I have to say that in the days preceding it, and even the whole week, the weather was awful. Luckily, on the day, the sun shone and it all went well. But it does show that it doesn't matter who you are, what sort of garden you have, what sort of life you lead. We all share exactly the same pleasures from our gardens and sometimes the same tribulations. I've got some cuttings here. These are blackcurrant cuttings that I took last year. So if I just tip them out like this, and I suspect there are massive roots. There we go. Now the thing to do is to break them up. Put your thumb in and just ease them apart. And actually, if you look there, you can see that the potting compost that I've used for the cuttings is full of grit. And if you're taking cuttings, make it gritty. Add perlite, grit, even sand. Nice and loose so the water can flow through it and also the roots have a nice easy root run. And I'm recycling some long pots to allow for that sort of length of root. And the compost that I've mixed up is really rich. And this has got 50% sieved garden compost, so they'll have a real boost. So if I put that in like that, that will now grow on nice and strong. When you plant out blackcurrants, put them in the sunniest spot you can. They're a plant that responds to good treatment really winningly. So lots of sunshine, lots of goodness, lots of water, lots of blackcurrants. So keep them outside over winter, store them, and then next spring, as soon as the ground feels warm enough and dry enough to handle, you could plant these out anytime really from January onwards. Right, well, while I finish this one off, here's some jobs for you to do this weekend. To prevent the buds of camellias, azaleas or rhododendrons falling off before they open next spring, it's important to make sure that these plants are well watered now and for the next 6 weeks or so. Use rainwater if you can and give them a good soak once a week. Beetroot are a crop that should be harvested regularly over quite a long period of time. I like to gather up the largest ones now, use them and leave the smaller roots to develop in the ground where they will store quite happily over the winter months. Now is a good time to cut any kind of hedge because you won't be disturbing nesting birds. But evergreen hedges in particular, like yew, holly, box or privet, will stay crisp and give good structure to the garden all winter long if you give them a quick trim now. Although the jewel garden with its rich colours grabs the attention when you come in, actually the grass borders are starting to really hit their stride too. And they will go on looking better and better after the jewel garden has faded and sometimes almost till Christmas. And the range of colours is much more limited. You've got all those bronzes and ochres and golds, but it's the linear quality, the vertical lines and then the leaves just falling elegantly and arching off them. And I do love it. It's not as operatic as a jewel garden, but it's certainly in its own way just as rich. Well, that's it for today. And I will be back here at Longmeadow next week. And Adam, Francis and Carol will be at Gardeners World Live in Birmingham. So join me here, them there, at 8 o'clock next Friday. Till then, bye-bye.